From rock bottom to millionaire. In this inspiring video, I share my incredible journey from being $5.5 million in debt to achieving financial freedom. You won't believe the strategies I used to turn my life around and build wealth. Get ready to learn from my mistakes and successes, and discover the mindset shifts that helped me overcome debt and achieve millionaire status. If you're struggling with debt or feeling stuck, this video is for you. Watch until the end to learn how I did it and how you can too. Join me as I take on the crazy challenge of turning my life around from $5.5 million in debt to becoming a millionaire. At one point, I found myself $5.5 million in debt, a staggering amount that felt insurmountable. The weight of it was crushing, and every day felt like I was sinking deeper. Most people would have written off the possibility of turning it around, but somehow, I didn't. The question everyone asked me was, how did you go from that much debt to becoming a millionaire? And believe me, the journey wasn't easy. It was filled with setbacks, tough decisions, and countless sleepless nights. But it was possible, and today, I can tell you how I made it happen. When I was drowning in $5.5 million of debt, every day felt like a battle I wasn't sure I could win. The financial struggles were overwhelming. I was constantly juggling creditors, making late payments, and trying to figure out how to make ends meet. It felt like I was working harder and harder but getting nowhere. Every month was a game of survival, where the goal was just to stay afloat, and it never felt like I could get ahead. I was embarrassed to talk about it, afraid of what people would think if they knew the truth. The weight of that secrecy took a toll on my mental health, leaving me feeling isolated and defeated. There were nights I couldn't sleep, overwhelmed by anxiety and fear about my future. I thought about quitting, just walking away from it all, because it seemed like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. The stress affected everything: my relationships, my confidence, and my overall sense of self-worth. I felt trapped in a cycle of failure that I couldn't break. On top of that, there was a constant pressure to maintain an appearance of success. I had to keep up the facade for family, friends, and colleagues while secretly spiraling into financial chaos. It wasn't just the numbers on a spreadsheet that weighed me down, it was the emotional strain of trying to balance everything without letting anyone see how broken I felt inside. I was consumed by guilt for my past mistakes, for putting my loved ones through this, for failing to live up to my own expectations. The emotional and financial struggles combined to create a perfect storm that pushed me to the edge, and I knew I had to make a choice: keep sinking, or find a way out. It wasn't easy, and the road ahead seemed impossible, but I learned something important along the way: that the only way to overcome these struggles was to face them head-on. And that's exactly what I did. I used to be $5.5 million in debt. It was a weight that felt unbearable, a constant reminder of mistakes I had made, poor choices, and situations that had spun out of control. It was a financial nightmare, and it seemed like there was no way out. I thought about giving up so many times, but something inside me kept pushing me to keep going. The road ahead seemed impossible, but I had to find a way to turn it all around. At first, the strategy was simple: I had to stop the bleeding. I started by reaching out to creditors, negotiating payment plans, and consolidating my debts to make them more manageable. It wasn't easy, and there were many sleepless nights, but slowly, I began to feel a sense of control. I stopped making excuses for myself and started focusing on what I could do to improve my situation. Every little victory, every payment made, no matter how small, kept me moving forward. Once I had a handle on the debt, the next challenge was increasing my income. I knew that if I was going to get out of this hole, I would have to earn more than I was spending. So I put in the extra hours at my job, took on side gigs, and looked for opportunities to grow my income. I also turned to entrepreneurship, which opened doors I never expected. I started small, but I was hungry. I found ways to invest in myself, my skills, and my future, even when it felt risky. Investing was the game changer. I began learning everything I could about smart investments, real estate, the stock market, and other avenues that could grow my wealth. At first, it felt daunting, but the more I learned, the more confident I became. Every dollar I earned, I reinvested into something that could help me build a better future. I was patient, and though it took time, the results started to show. As I worked through the debt, I had to shift my mindset completely. I stopped seeing myself as a victim of my circumstances and started thinking of myself as someone capable of overcoming anything. It wasn't just about managing money, it was about believing that I could turn things around and create a life I wanted. I sought out mentors, read books, attended seminars, and surrounded myself with people who had been through similar struggles. They taught me how to think differently about money and how to approach it with respect and strategy. It wasn't always easy, and there were many setbacks along the way. But over time, the pieces started to fall into place. I paid off my debts, one by one, and watched as my financial situation transformed. Slowly, I was able to build wealth, invest in my future, and create a life of freedom. It took years of hard work, sacrifice, and learning, but eventually, I reached the point where I could confidently say I had become a millionaire. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. It seemed impossible at the time, but with discipline, hard work, and a commitment to never giving up, I turned my life around. Now, I look at money in a completely different way. It's not the enemy, it's a tool that can be used to create the life you want. And I'll never forget the journey it took to get here. The pivotal moment when I realized I could actually turn my life around came one quiet evening, sitting alone in my office, surrounded by piles of bills, statements, and loan notices. I had just gotten off the phone with yet another creditor who was demanding payment I couldn't afford. I remember feeling this crushing wave of hopelessness wash over me, and for a brief second, I wanted to just throw in the towel. It felt like there was no way out, no way to escape this never-ending cycle of debt. But then, something inside me clicked. I looked at the pile of bills again, and for the first time, I stopped seeing them as the mountain I couldn't climb. I saw them as a series of steps, each one representing a manageable challenge I could break them down. I didn't have to face everything at once. That moment was a game changer. It was the first time I realized that while I couldn't fix everything overnight, I could take control, one step at a time. I remember pulling out a piece of paper and writing down the number that had haunted me for so long, $5.5 million. I wrote it down, stared at it, and told myself something I had never dared to admit before: I can fix this. I can pay this off. It was a huge mental breakthrough, because up until that point, I had seen the debt as this insurmountable monster that was simply going to define my future. But I realized right then that my future was still in my hands. I made the decision to face my debt head-on, to stop avoiding it, and to take every single step necessary to break free. That evening, I mapped out my first action plan. I reached out to a financial advisor the very next day, and together, we began organizing a strategy to tackle my debts. The realization that I could break down this enormous number into manageable pieces made it all feel possible. That moment was also when I decided I needed to change my approach to money entirely. I was going to learn everything I could about personal finance, investing, and entrepreneurship. I committed to building new skills, exploring new income streams, and being relentless in my pursuit of financial independence. I didn't know how long it would take, but I finally believed it was possible. From that point forward, every decision I made was with the goal of getting out of debt and building a better future. That shift in mindset, from seeing myself as a victim of my circumstances to realizing I had the power to change my story, was the turning point. I knew I could do it, and I did. That moment, sitting in my office, was when I stopped being defined by my debt and started defining my own future. When I hit rock bottom with $5.5 million in debt, I knew that simply hoping things would improve wasn't an option. The first step I took was to change my mindset. I had to stop seeing myself as a victim of my circumstances and start viewing my debt as something I could tackle, one step at a time. This shift was crucial. For so long, I had felt overwhelmed and helpless, but once I realized that I had control over my decisions, things started to change. It wasn't easy, but mentally reframing the situation helped me stop feeling trapped and empowered me to take action. The next step was confronting the numbers head-on. I sat down with a financial advisor, and together, we mapped out a plan. This was the hardest part, facing the full extent of my debt and realizing how much work I needed to do. But it was necessary. We organized the debt by priority and interest rate, and I worked on negotiating with creditors to lower interest rates or extend payment deadlines. For the first time in a long time, I had a clear, actionable plan that made the debt feel more manageable. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was progress. In parallel, I took a deep dive into my financial habits. I had to become extremely disciplined with my spending. I cut out every unnecessary expense, from luxury items to impulse purchases, and focused on living as frugally as possible. I created a strict budget that I adhered to religiously, cutting out anything that wasn't essential. It was hard at first, the lifestyle changes were uncomfortable, but I knew I had to sacrifice in the short term to secure a better future. I also sought out multiple streams of income. I knew that paying off such a massive debt would take more than just cutting expenses. I needed to bring in extra money. I started by taking on side gigs, leveraging my skills in ways I hadn't before. I also ventured into entrepreneurship, launching a small business that, while risky, ended up being one of the best decisions I made. With each new source of income, I was able to accelerate my debt repayment and build wealth at the same time. The more money I made, the more I focused on reinvesting it into opportunities that would help me grow. But none of this would have been possible without the support of others. I reached out to mentors and people who had gone through similar struggles. Their advice, both practical and emotional, helped me stay grounded during the toughest times. I joined support groups for people in financial recovery, where I could share my experiences and hear others' stories. These connections helped me feel less alone, and they reminded me that I wasn't the only one facing challenges. Along the way, I immersed myself in financial education. I read books, listened to podcasts, and attended seminars on money management, investing, and entrepreneurship. The more I learned, the more confident I became in my ability to make informed decisions about my financial future. This knowledge became a powerful tool that helped me grow not just financially, but personally as well. Slowly but surely, I started to see the fruits of my labor. It wasn't an overnight change, but I started paying off my debts, one by one. And with each debt cleared, I felt a little lighter. I kept investing in my business, diversifying my income streams, and watching my wealth grow. It was a marathon, not a sprint, but each day I took another step forward. Eventually, I reached the point where I could confidently say that I had gone from $5.5 million in debt to becoming a millionaire. Looking back, I see how vital that mindset shift was. It wasn't just about fixing my finances, it was about changing the way I approached challenges and recognizing that I had the power to shape my future. The support of others, the financial strategies I put in place, and my commitment to learning along the way were all critical to overcoming the mountain of debt I once faced. And today, I'm not just financially secure, I'm living proof that no matter how deep you're in, you can always climb your way out. If you're struggling with debt or feel trapped by your financial situation, I want you to know that there is always a way out. The journey won't be easy, but it starts with a single step. Take control of your situation today, no matter how overwhelming it seems. Start by changing your mindset, making a plan, and seeking support from those who have been where you are. You have the power to turn things around, just like I did. Don't let your past define your future. Start now, stay committed, and keep pushing forward. Your breakthrough moment is closer than you think. The first step begins with you, take it today.